KARE 11 News with Paul Majors, Diana Pierce, Jeff Passold Sports, and meteorologist Paul Douglas.
It's the picture of Robert Guevara we've all seen for months, a suspect charged with kidnapping and killing 5-year-old Corinne Erstad. But tonight, jurors must ponder another picture. Guevara, the prime suspect, breaking down and tearfully denying he had anything to do with the crime. Good evening. Paul has the night off. Robert Guevara claims he's a victim, not a criminal. And in one of the trial's most important days, Guevara is trying to implicate Corinne's mother in her disappearance. Tonight's other top stories include an emotional Minnesota lawmaker who now admits he covered up phone fraud to protect his son. Also, what went wrong on the launching pad to abort the space shuttle mission just 3 seconds before liftoff? And police hunt for a killer who gunned down a young man and sped away from a drive-by shooting. But our top story is a critical day in the kidnapping and murder trial of Robert Guevara. He took the stand in his own defense and denied any involvement in the disappearance of 5-year-old Corinne Erstad. Instead, he tried to shift the blame to Corinne's mother, Mona Williams. As KARE 11's John Stone reports, the outcome of this trial may hinge on today's developments.
Guevara's attorney, Anthony Torres, has walked this same path for a month. He's cross-examined 80 prosecution witnesses. The prosecution rested, and Torres took a risk. The first witness he called in Robert Guevara's defense, Robert Guevara himself.
Generally, defense lawyers tend to put their client on, if they're going to call him, tend to put him on last. Because you put him on because you believe that he will positively impact the jury, and therefore you want that to be the last thing that they hear. Putting him on first is different, certainly not unprecedented, and there could be reasons for doing it.
Torres wouldn't comment today on why he called Guevara to the stand, but told KARE 11 last week his decision might rest on this: those blood and semen-stained items found in Guevara's home and locker, and whether they would work against Guevara. They did, in a big way.
So Torres called Guevara to explain why those items were found where they were found. The answer, Torres says, lies with Corinne's own mother, Mona Williams. Suddenly, Guevara, the defendant, became Guevara, the accuser, and for a day, Corinne Erstad's mother became the accused.
Guevara painted Williams as an abusive mother who thought her kids were a burden. He said, a month before Corinne disappeared, Mona asked me if I knew anyone that would buy any of her kids. And he said he was having sex with Mona in Corinne's bedroom the day the child disappeared when a man who Mona knew came to the house. Guevara said Mona asked him if the man could store some stolen goods in Guevara's storage locker. Guevara said he agreed. Mona had the key. I gave it to her before I left. I gave her directions how to get there and the code to get in, Guevara testified. He said when he went there the next day, it looked like someone had rearranged the contents. Guevara said he had never seen before those bloodied items purported to be his. The defense is trying to prosecute Mona Williams. It has frustrated her friends and angered her family, who say Mona Williams has been through enough.
If Guevara's testimony pays off for the defense, jurors will find him not guilty. And in the end, that could leave the perception that Mona Williams is guilty, even though she's not on trial. John Stone, KARE 11 News.
Guevara testified he was buying cocaine when Corinne disappeared. He'll be back on the stand tomorrow, this time for cross-examination. Late word tonight from Minneapolis police. They're looking for a female babysitter who may have kidnapped a 6-month-old child. Police say the mother didn't know the sitter very well. The sitter and the child, named Colin, were last seen Sunday night in the 2300 block of 6th Street. Anyone with information should call Minneapolis police. A young man is dead, and police are hunting for suspects tonight after a drive-by murder in Minneapolis. The victim died after he was shot in the head while waiting for a bus near 4th Avenue South and East 38th Street. The shooting happened just a few yards from a preschool playground just as children were getting ready for recess.
Fortunately, they were like 2 minutes late behind what had already happened. 2 minutes earlier, we would have had other children hurt. It was just too close.
The victim has not been identified. Police say the descriptions of the drive-by vehicle vary from a pickup truck to a small car. The majority leader of the state Senate is admitting tonight he covered up the truth about $50,000 worth of phone calls that were billed to Minnesota taxpayers. DFL Senator Alan Welly originally denied knowing who broke his access code and made the calls. But as KARE 11's Dennis Stauffer reports, Welly now admits he did know, but kept quiet to protect his son.
Yes. And I guess I allowed my parental instincts to take over.
It was an at times tearful Alan Welly who asked for understanding of a father's efforts to protect his family.
What I think we have in this case, however, is a couple of young kids. Extremely good kids, by the way.
He explained how he learned more than a year ago that his son, who was then 13, and a 15-year-old nephew, had used his representative's long-distance access code and shared it with friends, who apparently shared it with their friends, and so forth, until thousands of fraudulent calls rang up $50,000 worth of charges at taxpayer expense. Welly also noted that his wife is now hospitalized and struggling with cancer.
I'm not looking for any sympathy, but I am asking for sensitivity to the things that are really important in this world. And that all too often take a back seat in this arena to politics, power, sensationalism.
Sympathy he may get, but it wasn't enough to blunt criticism from independent Republican Chairman Bob Weinholzer, who called for Welly's resignation.
This is a case where the taxpayers of Minnesota have been ripped off, and that there was a definite cover-up.
Weinholzer also called for House Speaker Dee Long to step down. Earlier, she had said Welly's fate was up to her caucus, and that she was in the dark, too, until a week ago.
Well, I certainly wish I had been more aware of what was happening, yes.
It was last Wednesday that the Star Tribune first reported this scandal. Today, Welly admitted that had this article not appeared, he had no intention of ever revealing his family's involvement in the fraud. Now he says he'd like to put the whole matter behind him as quickly as possible. But that may come at the price of his political career. Dennis Stauffer, KARE 11 News of the state capitol.
The House DFL caucus plans to discuss Welly's situation behind closed doors tomorrow. They may consider removing him as majority leader. News around the world begins in Florida, where the space shuttle Columbia made history of sorts without leaving the ground.
7, 6, 5, 4. And we have a main engine shutdown.
NASA computers shut down Columbia's engines this morning just 3 seconds before liftoff. A valve in one engine apparently failed to close, and that caused a pressure buildup. Computers caught the problem and scrubbed the launch. It'll be at least 3 weeks before Columbia can try again. The White House is offering only lukewarm support for a struggling Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Hardliners are trying to force Yeltsin out of office, and he's staying in power only by emergency decree. Secretary of State Warren Christopher says the U.S. will support Yeltsin in his fight against communist hardliners. But Christopher says the U.S. is also willing to work with other reformers in Russia. A commentator for Radio Moscow calls this the worst crisis in Russian history. One key now is the military. There's extreme pressure for it to stay neutral in this political conflict. But if the military gets involved, it could tip the balance of power. Second, the public itself. Yeltsin supporters and opponents have been increasingly vocal about the country's problems. If economic conditions get much worse, there could be widespread riots or even revolutions in some parts of the country. And experts say the U.S. role may be limited.
The truth is, there's not a lot we can do. What we can do is only two things. Put pressure on whatever is the authority in Moscow to maintain existing foreign policy agreements, arms control, non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, and so forth. Secondly, indirectly, through aid programs, we can help certain parties and friends inside Russia.
Russia's parliament has already started the impeachment proceedings against Yeltsin, and Yeltsin obviously fears a possible coup. He's ordered police to protect television stations and newspapers in case the legislature tries to take over. It's not the NCAA, but it's the next best thing, and the Minnesota Gophers are making the best of it. Jeff Passolt has highlights from another impressive performance in the NIT basketball tournament. Jeff?
Yeah, Di, so much for that NCAA snub, huh? The Gophers really doing a number in the NIT, and they're moving on to round 3, believe it or not. Highlight from the Target Center tonight, Vashawn Leonard, the big gun again for the Gophers. 17 points, 6 assists for the sophomore guard. And Vashawn and his teammates look good before another national TV audience. Clem Haskins and company advancing to round 3 of the NIT before 18,254 at the Target Center, a huge crowd, 86-72 the final. And that big crowd means that they're coming back for another game in the NIT. Coming up in sports, we'll tell you the who, when, and where.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
All right.
Well, the Gophers aren't the only sports team making news tonight. There are new developments in the Viking search for a new quarterback. We'll have more on that in sports. Later, what could be so special about a fishing lure that it would cost several $100s? But next in the Extra, a place in Minnesota where the employees get paid to blow things up. It looks like the makings of a terrible accident, but this explosion and many others like it are really intricate experiments. In tonight's Extra, a place where the employees destroy things for a living. The profession is called forensic engineering, and in one Twin Cities suburb, a dozen people spend their days burning, blasting, and blowing things up. The destruction, of course, has a purpose. As KARE 11's Alan Costantini reports, these professional destroyers are in big demand all around the country.
Inside a simple office in a quiet office building in Plymouth, they have been burning hair.
He was lighting a cigarette with a lighter, and something happened. He was not specifically sure, and there were no witnesses, but something caused his beard and hair to ignite and continue to burn.
He, of course, is not the metalhead model with human hair, wig, mustache, and beard. He was a worker in a plant who tried to sue the maker of the cigarette lighter. The manufacturer turned to Thomas Crane and his forensic engineers in Plymouth.
So we essentially become the Quincy of engineering, where we look at the evidence after the fact when an incident has occurred, try to apply to it principles of engineering and science to develop an understanding as to what truly happened in an incident and draw conclusions based on that.
Crane created metalhead models, decorated them with human hair, placed them in a sealed box, and set the hair on fire.
Now, the unusual part about that is that hair, human hair, is a substance which would be considered self-extinguishing.
Crane demonstrated how the raised oxygen levels in the plant, where oxygen cylinders were filled, affected the combustibility of the hair. The case settled out of court. Searching for the truth behind accidents, often fatal ones, is a large part of the work of the tiny company in the quiet suburb. Engineer Justin Heil is recreating a test of children's T-shirts to see if silkscreen designs make them more or less flammable.
In the beginning stages, the silk screening seems to hinder the flame spread. Notice how it's going faster down than up, and the silk screening is kind of preventing that.
Heil is also studying the heat output of a wall furnace. Could an identical furnace have caused a fire that killed 2 children in Kansas City? Heat sensors attached to magnets measure the temperatures produced by the furnace. Just another day in the life of a 15-year-old company that makes money by doing things like blowing up appliances with natural gas to find the cause of a kitchen fire.
The work here isn't all fires and explosions. A lot of it is very mundane. For instance, this is the nozzle from a hose used to fill a propane tank. For a court case in another state, T. Crane and Associates prepared a cutaway version of that nozzle, so the jury in the case could see how the interior workings of the nozzle work.
Metallurgical engineer John Bridnelson has had some historic bits of metal under his expert gaze at T. Crane, from finding a way to cut through seawater-hardened iron from the famous HMS Bounty to proving the authenticity of aluminum from the crashed bombers of Jimmy Doolittle's World War II raid on Tokyo. But it is day-to-day quality control that pays the bills, like studying bits of metal embedded in fused lucite powder to see if the steel is up to the client's expectations.
Well, you want to be sure that you have a proper microstructure that before processing, so that whatever process you expose it to will be, successful and give you a serviceable part.
But the forensic engineers at T. Crane honestly admit that the most satisfying work is solving mysteries.
We recreated a basement in terms of its size, shape, and structure that had been involved in a propane gas explosion.
Ignition!
When 2 people were severely burned in a northern Minnesota explosion that did not ignite the house, Crane demonstrated how a powerful gas explosion could blow apart a building without setting it on fire.
This has got to cost whoever needed this done a fair chunk of money, I would think.
From time to time, it can certainly be expensive.
But for clients with millions of dollars at stake in lawsuits around the country, Crane and Associates' price tag can be a bargain. Alan Costantini, KARE 11 News, Plymouth.
watching KARE 11 News at 10.
A few miles can make all the difference, especially when it comes to the weather. Southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, and southeastern South Dakota are all shoveling out from under several inches of new snow. Twin Cities received only a few flurries, but 7 inches of snow fell in Wabasha and 9 in Laverne. However, the snowfall title for the storm goes to Sioux Falls with more than a foot. Alice joins us right now.
Boy, that was close.
Too close for comfort.
Too close. That's true. 7 inches in Wabasha. That is very, very close to us. And yes, we did see those few light snow flurries. Only amounted to about 2/10 of an inch of snow here in the Twin Cities. Here's a look at the rest of the almanac data for today. The high temperature made it to 37 after a low this morning of 27. And right now we stand at 34 degrees. We do have some breaks in the clouds, especially over the central metro right now. The clearing line has been in Golden Valley about the past hour, with winds east at 5 miles an hour. The dew point temperature 24 degrees, humidity 66%, and pressure falling off. Well, you know, it's springtime when you talk about severe weather, and there is quite a squall line that's been going on over parts of eastern Texas tonight. With Earthwatch, we'll fly you right through that squall line, which has been responsible for hail the size of golf balls over parts of eastern and southern Texas, and also some funnel clouds reported along this line of thunderstorms as it continues to head east. Plenty of lightning, as you can see, with these thunderstorms, and as we fly you up and out of them, it changes over basically to rain showers over parts of the Mississippi Valley into Missouri. They picked up over an inch of rain today, and then we did have that light snow to the south. Check at temperatures right now shows 34 degrees in the metro, but further to the west, 28 now in Fargo-Moorhead, 33 degrees over in Bismarck, and where they saw 62 this afternoon, 41 right now in Williston. Satellite loop does show that clearing line starting to work its way in from west to east gradually, just a few patchy high clouds off further north and west, but we are looking at clearing skies over just about all of Minnesota. I think the clouds should hang tight over southeast sections of the state. One low pressure system moving through very quickly, followed by a real springtime air mass heading in our direction for the next few days. I'll have the complete forecast for you right after this. Well, underneath this springtime air mass tomorrow across the Rockies, check out these high temperatures that are expected into the 70s as far north as central Montana. Temperatures in the 60s again for the Dakotas. Some 50s working their way in over parts of western Minnesota, but we should be in the 40s here in the Twin Cities. That warm-up is on the way. Here's the forecast then. Tonight, gradually clearing skies. That clearing line should make it through the metro over the next few hours, and still some low clouds hanging tight over southeast Minnesota. Looks like we could still see a few areas of patchy fog developing late tonight and also tomorrow morning, and then partly sunny skies, highs near 40. Extended forecast warms us up right through the 50s by the end of the week, 58 on Friday.
That's just amazing. That's great.
Won't it be great to get rid of wool for a while?
Don't hold your breath too long. That's true. Probably with us for just a little bit longer. Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah.
Well, the Gophers are looking like serious contenders in the NIT. They trampled a good team tonight. We'll have the highlights next. And it appears the Vikings may have settled on a new quarterback. Jeff Passold has that story. Traveling music for the Sooners, I think.
Yee-hi. Yeah, they're out of town.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Don't get mad, get even. That's what the Gophers are doing here. Postseason play, and the Gophers are digging it. Moving on to round 3 of the NIT with a surprising and impressive blowout win at the Target Center before 18,254. That's an amazing crowd for postseason play. Bashan Leonard with another big game, 17 points. He gets a couple here on the alley-oop. Leonard and the Gophers running up the score on Oklahoma, which is kind of the way, opposite of what a lot of people thought would happen. Nate Tubbs with a dozen points for the Gophers tonight, so he comes through in a big way, and the Gophers win it, 86-72.
We came out mentally focused tonight in the first half. We were hitting our shots, and I think that's what you need to do. You have to be consistent every night and putting the shots down to beat a team like Oklahoma.
Great support received here. And you asked me why we won and beat a team by 20 points, 18 points, or 10 points, whatever. It's because I think the great support we received from the fans.
Now here it is, round 3, and the fans will get their chance again because the Gophers will host the winner of the USC Pepperdine game. They're going to move it to Met Center on Wednesday because the Wolves are playing San Antonio at the Target Center that night. 6:30 tip-off. Tickets go on sale tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the Bierman Building, Met Center, or through Ticketmaster. So a chance for more fans to turn out for another Gopher game as their season continues. And a KARE 11 sports scoop on the Timberwolves tonight. Sidney Lowe will become the official head coach of the Wolves by midweek, finally losing that interim status. The NHL trading deadline came and went without the North Stars making a deal, so the Stars will try to hang on to a playoff spot with a banged-up roster. But the Vikings are ready to play let's make a deal for a quarterback. It looks like 11-year veteran Jim McMahon is set to sign an incentive-laden contract with the Vikes. McMahon wants the job bad, and a price tag of about $1.5 million a season fits the Vikes' stingy situation much better than the $2 to $3 million a year it would take to get someone else. McMahon could be signed by the end of the week. And in Chicago, the Bears have taken care of their quarterbacking needs. Free agent Jim Harbaugh signing a 4-year, $13 million deal today that includes $5 million next season alone. It makes the 7-year veteran one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in the NFL. And now it's time for our Athletes of the Week. Tonight we honor a pair of basketball stars, and here's Steve Carroll.
Championship of AA goes to the Bloomington Jefferson Jaguars.
Bloomington Jefferson grabbed the Class AA title Saturday night with depth and balance. One of the key players during the championship weekend was center Colleen Pulzine. The 6'1 senior was absolutely dominant in the semifinals against Rochester Mayo, scoring 25 points and grabbing 20 rebounds. A day later, she played a major role in helping her team win the state title.
I guess it was like a relief totally. It was the best feeling I've ever had. It was excitement. Everyone was so excited, thrilled. I don't know, but most of all, I guess it was just relief, just to know that it was done with, and now we can say we are #1 and that we are the state champs.
This is the Jefferson girls' first basketball championship since 1978. Totino Grace's Bud Heifert picked a great time to get hot. The junior forward poured in a team-high 19 points Friday night, helping the Eagles reach the state tournament by upsetting Minneapolis Roosevelt in the Section 5 AA final.
At the beginning I started, but then I got into a slump, and at the end of the year I started to come around, and my shot's really starting to fall for me now. It came at the right time, so going to state.
This will be the Eagles' very first state tournament appearance. Steve Carroll, KARE 11 Sports.
And for tonight's play of the day, a big highlight from the NCAA tournament that is making waves. Literally. Wake Forest and their mascot, the Demon Deacon, hanging 10. Brings a whole new meaning to the term body surfing.
Ow.
I'd rather be on top than on the bottom there.
Oh, that looks painful.
The Twins lost at spring training today to Boston 8-6. They have tomorrow off.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Well, before we go, what kind of fishing lures would be worth several $100s a piece? The answer after tonight's winning Daily 3 numbers.
Here's this week's KARE 11 News Express run, St. Paul Route 15, White Bear Lake to downtown St. Paul. Leaves Highway 96 and Stewart Avenue at 6:50 a.m., Maplewood Mall at 7:12. Arrives 6th Street and Cedar at 7:45 a.m. Join KARE 11 in the MTC for a free ride on the KARE 11 News Express.
Before we go tonight, hunters know all about duck decoys and goose decoys, but not everyone's as familiar with fish decoys. John Snow is a master carver of fish decoys. In fact, his works of wood can sell for hundreds of dollars each. But he's proudest of the ones he uses on the lakes of Wisconsin to lure fish towards his hole in the ice. He can even make his wooden fish appear to swim beneath the surface.
What am I doing wrong right here?
You're holding it too high. You hold it down this way.
What do you do if the guy comes up and grabs a decoy?
You hang on to that.
Well, John's work is featured at museums all over the Midwest, and you can even find some of his decoys at the Smithsonian in Washington. Obviously, he's got a lot of time on his hands.
Could use a couple of hooks, I think. On this
Yeah, it'd be a little bit easier.
A lot easier.
Oh. I guess that's going to do it for us? Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
after the snow flurries today, we'll find a major warm-up on the way for the rest of the week. Here's the complete forecast. Gradually clearing skies tonight. Some patchy fog developing. Temperatures into the mid-20s by early morning. Looks like we could see low 40s for highs tomorrow, with skies partly sunny. And the extended forecast, a big warm-up close to 50 Wednesday, in the low 50s Thursday, upper 50s close to 60 by the end of the week, with a stretch of sunny days. Good night.